we're very much a brand first business. We put a huge amount of stock into brand, something that's really important in fashion, and the space that we're in. So if you wanted to get a little bit more into the soft factors of it, which is probably the more fun part, Manors has this idea that uh, golf is not a sport to be mastered, but a game to be explored. Every other golf brand is basically trying to say, this is going to make you better. And we don't have to say that. Like, we're never trying to say that. So all we're trying to do is, how do we entertain golfers? Like, what is a story that isn't being told right now?
I'm Eric Fulweiler, and this is Scratch, bringing you marketing lessons from the leading brands and brains rewriting the rulebook from scratch for the world of today.
Hey everyone, it's Viren here. I am the executive producer of Scratch and of Rival Media. You typically don't hear my voice, and yes, you are missing the sultry tones of Eric Fulweiler this week. I've stepped in to host this very special episode of Scratch with Alex Ames of Manors Golf. So Manors Golf is an up-and-coming challenger brand in the golf athleisure space. They've been absolutely crushing it over the past 5 years. As a very rubbish golfer myself, I was super excited to get them on the podcast and also have this conversation, hence why I'm doing the show today, as opposed to Eric. So hopefully you can bear with me. This was just such an incredible conversation. Honestly, like, Alex and his team think about the way they create this brand or the way they're building this brand in just such an interesting way. They have this thesis of being the most creative and storytelling brand in the world when it comes to golf. If you check out what they're doing, you'll notice such high production values in every single piece of content they put out. And really, their thesis of being that most creative and storytelling led brand, they really have won. They've cut out such a cool niche in the market of golf, and in a market which is, typically saturated by huge big players like Callaway, Ping, TaylorMade, all the like. So they've really been doing something interesting over there. We talk about everything from how they built, a real ambassador community right from the time when they were really small and just starting out, to now how they have like influencers paying them to come to their events and post content for them, as opposed to the other way around, and how they managed to reframe that typical brand influencer relationship. So that's something really interesting there. Then the other part of our conversation, we really dive deep into actually what their creative sessions internally look like. He gives us a real insight into what the creative punch-ups internally look like before they come up with all their great content, and how they really think about, what would be the 6 pieces of viral content we could do out of this one hook that we've got. So they really think about it from a social first lens, but also just like what's going to work, what's going to be talkable. And that's obviously something we know about as being one of the key core tenets for challenger brands. And the final bit of the conversation, we really speak about their collaborations with other brands. He has this great phrase of, we fucking hate brand soup. Excuse my French, but that's exactly what it is. And, he speaks about the fact that most challenger brands will start doing loads and loads of different collabs, but actually that might not be so valuable. So he breaks down his framework and how they ended up with this amazing collab that they did with Reebok. So without further ado, enjoy my conversation with Alex Ames of Manors Golf. Alex, welcome to Scratch.
Hey, Viren, thank you. Excited to be here.
Yeah. You're definitely not as excited as I am. I've been a big fan of Manors Golf for a very, very long time. I've been a very rubbish golfer for a very long time. So it's,
Well, me too. So don't worry about that.
But yeah, I was super happy to get you guys on the show, and yeah, really grateful that actually I'm getting to host this one, given that I've been such a fan of the brand, and I just see the brand going from strength to strength every year since you guys have been born. And yeah, I think you've just done your biggest launch ever, and coincidentally, we're recording this on Ryder Cup weekend, which is amazing for most golf fans if you're out there listening. So yeah, I'm very excited to have you on the show. I'm really excited to get into all the intricacies about Manors Golf and how you guys have built such a standout brand in the golf space.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I'm excited to have this chat. It's not often that someone sort of it happens on LinkedIn sometimes when you've been working on something, but you're in your own echo chamber, and then someone sort of reflects back exactly what you've been trying to do, and they really get the brand, and that's what you guys did. So it's really cool to hear that, and yeah, I love the podcast. So thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, cool. Alex, the one question that we ask every single guest before we get started and started talking about their own brand is what's one challenger brand that you're passionate about right now and it can't be your own?
I think someone who is doing it so well in a similar space to us, and they've been a bit of a beacon for us in terms of laying down a playbook, and we've borrowed some really we just admire them. Is Satisfy Running, um, who are based in France, and we work with one of their creatives, who's been involved with the brand for a very long time. Uh, and running and golf were going through similar changes and updating and a bit of disruption. Um, so it was cool to yeah, it's just cool to have them as a yardstick for like really best in class for brand, and we admire them a lot. So huge fan of Satisfy Running.
They're such a great brand, honestly. I think this is the second shout out that they've had on Scratch, funnily enough. The first one was with the founder Ben Amana of Box Raw, the startup
Okay,
boxing brand. So based out of Coventry, they're kind of taking over the boxing space. But he also noted Satisfy Running as like the
very
playbook and
cool.
like the
Yeah,
people who are doing it correctly. So yeah, we definitely want to get them on the show at some point. But yeah, I love everything that they're doing out there.
agreed.
Cool. Okay, so Alex, can you now give us a very quick overview of what Manners actually does for those that don't know?
Yeah, sure. So Manners is a golf apparel business. So primarily performance wear for golf. If you can imagine, I mean, probably the easiest way to say it when we say it in shorthand is, and this applies from a brand perspective, but also from a functionality and clothing and practical perspective, is imagine like an Arc'teryx or a North Face for golf. So combining that kind of aspirational lifestyle, cultural feel of a passion hobby that's kind of on the brand side, but then with the functionality, performance wear, a little bit of lifestyle in there because it is a really important part of people's lives, something they feel passionate about, golf, um, or in the example I use, climbing or sort of outdoor sports. Um, and
Yeah.
yeah, so it's performance wear kind of meets lifestyle.
Yeah, that's awesome. I feel like you've probably undersold that a little bit because I definitely think I understand it at least as, playing golf and not playing golf very well, but like I think I understood it very much as a like the first true lifestyle brand that I could see. I think there was a couple of others early doors when I first started getting into golf, which was like, sort of a random golf club by Eric and Anders Lang and like the stuff that they're doing, but I felt like Manners was, homegrown and really paired that lifestyle element of it with the amazing content that you guys do. And we're definitely going to get into the content, how you come up with it, and all the creative stuff. But one interesting thing I've clearly seen, and we spoke about in the prep call, was like, you're not just trying to be another lifestyle golf brand. You know, you've described that positioning as you're kind of like the North Face or Arc'teryx for golf. But how did you guys come up with that position? Because that's quite an interesting position to come up with.
Well, perhaps I took your first question a bit too literally. So what we do is performance wear in golf, but uh, we're very much a brand first business. We put a huge amount of stock into brand, something that's really important in fashion, and the space that we're in. So if you wanted to get a little bit more into the soft factors of it, which is probably the more fun part, Manners has this idea that uh, golf is not a sport to be mastered, but a game to be explored. That's kind of our foundational belief, if you want to use that kind of brand terminology. And I think if you looked at the golf space over the last 20, 30 years, it was dominated by big brands. Um, and it got quite stiff. I think as a sport, it had got quite stiff. It's an expensive sport. And it's also a sport that people can play until they're very old. And the money stacks, the sort of spending power stacks up with age. So it was geared towards an older demographic. Um, and it was also geared towards the pro game. Those were kind of the two things going on. So you had it was very stuffy, or it had become like elite performance, and it was about, how far do I hit this drive, 330 yards. It was really bright, garish polos, tightly hugging the biceps, and it was just, to be honest, like it was a brand that wasn't. It was a sorry, it was a landscape that wasn't really resonating with a lot of us in the team, particularly with our co-founders Jojo and Luke when they started the business. Um, and how we landed on this golf as a game to be explored. Uh, I actually handled the rebrand before I went to Manners, so I was at an agency, and Manners came to our agency, and we handled that branding process. Um, and basically, every golfer, whether you're a 20 handicap or you're a scratch handicap, knows the feeling of going to a new place and being super excited to play a new golf course. It's got that same thing that fishing or climbing or cycling has, where it's like the adventure and the seeing the new track or mountain or river. It's absolutely intrinsic to the sport. It's like the golf course is this very special thing. We also have this thing in golf where it's like, if I like football and I'm a shit footballer, I don't necessarily get to play at Old Trafford. But as a golfer, I can go and play at St Andrews, I can go and play the old course. So you have this thing which is like the journey is one of the most amazing things in golf. And that was a feeling that we could see in the culture, social media, just anecdotally, the way we felt about the game. And it wasn't being reflected in the brands that we could see in the market. And I think the other interesting thing about that is it was it was across a very wide spectrum of golfers. And so I felt like a lot of golfers were being ignored, and a lot of new golfers were being ignored, the higher handicappers and the people who don't necessarily care about shooting scratch on the weekend. It's about enjoying it, having a beer with your friends afterwards. You can be super up for winning and be competitive, all that stuff, but there's so much more to golf than just that scorecard, and that kind of became another belief of ours. It's about, we said it's about the scorecard, not the score. So it's like, where did you play? That's on your scorecard. But the score that you write down isn't
Doesn't
really
really matter.
important.
That's
Yeah.
a really interesting. I'm really interested as to how you pulled that insight out in terms of like golf as a game to be explored. And the reason I ask this is actually because this is a little bit of a winding story, but I'm going to tell it anyway because I think this will frame up my question properly. This past summer, so just like about a month ago, I was in Maui for my honeymoon, and my now wife, she's never played golf before, never really been interested in it. She's like, whatever, go and play with your friends. I'm not really interested in this. But obviously in Maui, there's some amazing golf courses, and where we were staying, I was like, oh, the golf course looks amazing. I'd love to get out there. And she was like, just like, let's go. I'll drive the car. Let's go." And I was like, "You're gonna have such a bad time, but fine. If you're saying yes, we'll do it together." We went, and she actually loved it. And actually, the exploration of being on this new course and like understanding the history of this course and just seeing the views and all this stuff, it actually felt like a proper day out. So much
Ooh.
so that she's now come back. We've come back to London. She signed herself up for golf lessons, and she's gone
Oh,
fully into golf.
love to hear
Like,
it. That is
it's
so good.
insane. But actually, this element of like feeling like it's an exploration is something which I never thought about as like as an inroad into golf. But actually,
Mhm.
that's why I'm really curious to understand how you guys stumbled upon that insight. Like, that's such an interesting one.
Um, it's interesting. So Luke Davies, who is our fantastic and very visionary, very smart creative director, he founded the brand. I've been friends with him for a very long time, which is why I ended up with the branding project. He came to us knowing there is an explorer archetype here that is untapped in golf. And I think that he always felt there was an opportunity to tell a different story. I just think he was really clear that like all the notes in golf are not being played. Like if you're thinking about a keyboard has 88 keys, something like that, like, golf was being played right at one end. All the keys were being hit. It was like 20 keys. And there's just like, there's this whole different, different space to play in. And it just wasn't being done. Um, and I think, there's still a massive space for those keys that were originally being played. That's still the primary part of golf, but there was just so much being missed. So Luke actually came with us and said, I know that there is a feeling here that we're not quite leveraging, and that we're not quite looking at as golf brands and as an industry. And so then it was our job to go and do the research. We looked, by the way, I worked for an agency called Sonder and Tell, fantastic agency, strategy agency in London. Um, and we would do so much quantitative research. So it wasn't about like, we weren't pouring through market research or anything like that. We were looking at golf top 100, and I'm a golf nerd, so I knew the space already, and I knew that that archetype was very much real. So it was about finding inspiration. There's the literature on golf exploration is absolutely endless, and yet there was no brand tapping into that. Like it, I'd love to say that we stumbled across this amazing insight, but it was all there. Like I think it's Bernard Darwin is an old writer from like the 40s who wrote a book about great courses, big and small in England. There's Golfers Journal in the US who does an incredible job. They were already running. They had that kind of surfer outdoor vibe, but applied to golf. So there was stuff going on in the zeitgeist, and it's been around for long enough. For us, it was a surprise that it wasn't being done well already. And so we leaned into it, and I think you've seen the whole golf space has shifted that way since. I think Manners is in a big way responsible for that. I think we've ended up on sound like a bit of a knob here, but we've wound up on a lot of mood boards for other brands. And I think the whole space is kind of shifting towards that enjoyment of the game, that kind of thing. I think COVID also helped, but it was all there already. I'd love to say we came up with it, but it was all there.
Well, that's part of it, isn't it? Like, I think great insights, especially when it comes to challenger brands and building in a legacy category, oftentimes it is kind of looking at what's already there and just reframing it and understanding that actually this has existed, but people haven't looked at it through this lens or whatever it is. So I think that's quite an important way of looking at things.
Yeah, I would also say that um, if you think about how golf was being marketed, it was being marketed through pros, and it was being marketed at pro shops. So on trade. And you have to look at that distribution and think like, okay, one of them was for the super athletes who are really into golf, and then the other ones were for the sort of, country club elite style. And that was the two types of branding that you had in golf. And so it made sense. And what happened in recent years, and especially during COVID, was social media. So people then got to add their own interpretation to everything. And so much of it was the beauty, the just like being able to show, look at where I am
Yeah.
with your iPhone. And I think that really changed the culture and blasted it open for a lot of younger golfers.
Definitely. And we're gonna get into that, like your social media stuff in the next chapter. But whilst we're here, I wanted to talk about obviously your one of the key things that we've seen challenger brands do really well, especially when they're coming into an incumbent category where there's a lot of a lot of original players already in the space. We see that they'll lean very, very heavily into like sort of paid media and just like trying to dominate the market through like yeah, I just want to say paid media strategies more than anything else. But with your background in obviously content storytelling, you did stuff for Arsenal before, for Taekwondo before, and also Luke's like creative vision. What sort of unique creative philosophies did you bring into Manners, and why was storytelling so important for you guys right at the beginning?
I'd love to take credit for having this genius strategy of creative, but the reality was like we came from a background of film, and Luke was a director. I had worked in production and agency, and when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So that was our background. We wanted to make interesting content and films and tell stories. And I had a writing background as well. We did a lot of writing about golf, and it was, part passion, part because it was just all we knew how to do. Uh, we did have this interesting inflection point where we launched the brand and it went really well, the launch. And we only had enough budget to launch 2 collections a year at that point. So we had a spring, summer, and an autumn, winter, and we'd sort of bookend the summer. And we launched our spring, summer for the new collection. It was like this big rebrand and it was super exciting and it went really well. A month goes past, starts to go a little bit worse. Like Shopify sales are dipping, and we're like, there's not a lot going on. There's not a lot of traction. Another month goes by. It's just like falling off a cliff now. Bear in mind, none of us have a real background in like marketing. So we don't really know about awareness and like impressions and all that stuff. We're kind of making up as we go along. And we started calling this time, now looking back at it, we call it the dark ages, because at this point we had so little money that if we didn't get something going, we could be out of business in 6 months. And then we threw this event. It was a bit of a Hail Mary. We know, like, we had a pretty good network in London, so we managed to get some cricketers, some footballers, like an interesting crowd, just 32 people to an event in London in the middle of summer. Did some storytelling around it, did some social media around it, and also we had the influencer work of people just going like, Manners are doing this cool event. And overnight we saw sales pick up. And so we're just like, okay, we're just not doing enough. We're not like turning up in enough places. We're not telling enough stories. We're not throwing enough events. We're not engaging with people enough. So we went from, we just had this kind of penny drop moment, and we needed a lot of work to go before we got to our eventual strategy. But so much of it was just like, how do you show up so regularly? One way was events. That was the first clue. But we realized like you just need people's attention. If you're releasing a collection twice a year, though it's essentially 2 weeks a year where you have a reason to talk about something. And so we just needed to create so many reasons to talk about Manners. And so we started thinking, and Luke actually went away and did this whole strategic breakdown of like, how are we gonna earn attention, and how are we gonna make attention the like foundational currency of our business. So storytelling, getting people to want to spend their attention with Manners is gonna be like absolutely fundamental, to the point where it's it takes priority over the product. It's like we have an amazing product team, and our product's super premium, and we don't make huge margins because we make sure that we pass the value to the customer. However, that's not our unfair advantage. It's so hard to make clothes, fashion, that like really stands out. So it's like, how do you build a brand that makes people super passionate about you? I mean, Gucci can put Gucci on a white t-shirt and sell it for 10 times more than Uniqlo. So it's like everyone knows this is intrinsically true. Like brand is so important in fashion. And so it was like, how do we tell the most compelling story? How do we get the most attention? How do we make people really passionate about manners? And that's how we started rolling into our organic content strategy, which we can get into the nitty gritty of, I'm sure.
Hey everyone, just another quick interruption. If you're listening to this podcast and you're not already part of our AMP community on WhatsApp, would love for you to get involved. So AMP is a community that we started at the beginning of the business, really, just to kind of bring together some of the interesting people that we were talking to, the marketers that we were coming across, many of whom have been on this show as well. And so now AMP is about 300 senior marketers from around the world, from various categories, different stages, challengers, incumbents. And it's really a place where people can share questions, can share resources, can make new connections, can use folks as sounding boards. And for those that are in it, you know, it is a very vibrant community. It's really taken on a life of its own, which is amazing. So if you're listening to this and you want to get involved, please go to our website, wearerival.com. There you can find the application form or reach out to me or someone at Rival directly. Thanks so much.
Let's definitely do that. But before we jump into that section, because I have like 50 questions in that section about your creative process and everything, but I did want to quickly touch on the event strategy because I think that's a really interesting one. I've been obviously quietly watching you guys from afar and stalking everything you do on social media, and I noticed that like even for your events, you're kind of to your earlier point, you're not really focused on the pros or even the golfers who have like, at least from my angle, like massive followings, like golf creators who have massive followings. Like the event you did last week, I think at Brockett Hall, I was like clicking through some of the golfer profiles that were there, like and invited to the event, and I was like, these are just like everyday people with a few thousand followers. Like that, I feel like I could play with some of them.
Yeah, for
Whereas like
sure.
a lot of
You should
other
come.
brands, I mean, I'll definitely take you up on that. But like, I feel like a lot of the other brands, like they're leaning into like, oh, who has the biggest following, and that's the person we're going to invite to play the course before the Ryder Cup or whatever it is, you know. Um,
Sure.
so it feels like there's a distinctly different position you've taken on events. So can you talk to me just a little bit about what that strategy is for events?
Yeah, I would say that look, the first time we did it, and it was 32 of us, and that's the all we could afford. We paid for everyone to play at a really nice golf course, and it was all influencers, and it was really nice. And they like, they taught us a lot, and they did a lot for us because they posted about the brand. It's super cool for like the authority of manners when we were tiny. But as we've got bigger, we've realized that like so much of it and a hugely important part of building a brand is having people who really, really believe in what you do and who you are. And not really from a marketing perspective. As you say, like these people don't have a huge following. It's not gonna change our business. Um, but you get feedback and you actually get to know your customers. There's so many people from that event that we had a couple weeks ago who I've known for 3 years now, and they're just people who bought Manners when it launched, and I know them really, really well. I see them 4 or 5 times a year, and they feel like they're an extension of the business. Um, with regards to influencers and how that mix happens, like, at a certain point we started selling tickets for these events because they're expensive. So we made no profit on them, but we just needed to try, and if we wanted to throw them, we had to charge. And so we just said like, okay, um, influencers have to pay, and if they want to come, great. But really, this is for us to engage with our customers. And, Ashley Cole came to our event last week and paid, whatever, his £80 for a ticket. And then you've got, my mate Theo, who's been there for 3 years, who's just like, he's just a lad who we know who comes to the events because he loves it. And he's having the same bacon and egg bap in the morning as Ashley Cole. And and potentially like, Declan Rice or whatever. And it's really cool that it's happening. It's happened so organically. And we sell a few tickets on, I'll be honest, like we sell, let's say 40-50% of the tickets on our website. They go in 10 minutes. And then we sell 50 where we go, do you want to come to an influencer, our ambassadors, those people? And but we charge them for the ticket and they're happy to pay. Um, and it's really cool because they're like, I feel like as a result, the relationship has become, it's become more like a bit less like fanboy and corporate, as like we, they're not trying to, they know we're a small business trying to make something happen. They like the business. They support it by giving us 100 quid and turning up to our event and then posting about it, even though the value they're providing is massive. And it's so cool that they do that. But they also they don't have to do it. There's no pressure. And I think they kind of like that. It's like, I'm helping out.
That really reframes the whole like brand influencer partnership that you typically hear about, where like influencer is like, pay me £10,000, otherwise nothing goes out.
Yeah, I
So
would say that I'm so hot on this actually, and I want to write about it. Um, and post about it because I think it's so interesting. I think that you get the most unspoken about value of brand is the discounting that you get. Is like influencers will work with you for less and be excited to do it. People will do stuff, creatives, really, really good creatives who want to be involved in your creative process will approach the brand and be excited to work with us. And like, we can't afford the creatives that we work with, but they've been excited about the early work that we've done and they want to be a part of building that. And so they've come on board. And really that all of that credit goes to Luke, our creative director, who's just an absolute genius at bringing a vision to life on screen and in design and all those kind of things.
yeah, I mean, yeah, this kind of actually segues us really nicely into that next chapter that we had sort of laid out in the initial brief, which is like, when we spoke about this in the prep call, you had made this very clear statement that the thesis for Manors is very much that creative and brand will win. And because of that, you've significantly outspent peers when it comes to content and just production value. I mean, obviously now looking at it sort of what, five years in roughly, it's
Yeah.
it's easy to see like, okay, that was a right bet. But was it just sheer like Luke forcing it through in the beginning, where he said, okay, this is the bet that we're going to take, and like we're going to just have really high production value? I know you kind of mentioned the hammer and the nail analogy previously as well, but just I think that there's a really interesting question in that, in the sense that a lot of challenger brands, when they start up, they're faced with not a lot of money, and they have to make a big impact, and sometimes taking that decision is pretty tough. So I'm just interested to understand a bit more about the thought process when going into that.
Yeah. So, look, as I said, we spent a lot of money early making sure that everything was super premium and the content was really good. The creators we worked with were really good. The photographers were really good. I People weren't photographing golf in that way yet. Like, I honestly think we were quite ahead of the curve in the way that we positioned ourselves and the way we made everything look. Now, what's interesting is that no one really saw it because we spent no money on paid social getting it out there. We had no budget for, um, we had no budget for paid social. And we weren't even using iPhone stuff yet, and we can get onto that in a minute, but, like, we were so keen on it being premium that we refused to use iPhone to shoot anything. So, we basically had, like, a suite of amazing assets that weren't geared up for going viral. There weren't that many of them, but it looked really, really good. Um And I think the first people that took to Manners were people who really appreciated that and were, ultimately became super into the brand because they found something that wasn't big, that looked amazing, and they carried it. And I would say that like a lot of those people were influential people. So like key opinion leaders and influencers and those people, particularly in the era of creatives, can now carry a brand. And so there's a value in making sure the thing that is, the like the assets and the stuff that is so close to the brand is so, so, so strong. And we overspent on it. But I would say that it's more through ignorance than anything else. Um, it would eventually become strategy and yeah, it evolved and we also became a bit more relaxed about what went out on our socials and using iPhone and all that kind of stuff. But at the beginning, it was ignorance, and then we shat ourselves because we weren't getting enough awareness. And it was kind of like the influencers who picked us up, who were keen to come to the event because they saw how cool the assets were. It was like a bit of luck that there were enough people around who saw it and thought, this is really cool. I'm going to shout about it.
Fair enough, fair enough. And actually, then let's get into more of that actual process because, it's one thing putting something beautiful out, but concepting that stuff. Look, I've worked in video production for the past 10 years. Like, I know how difficult it is to come up with creative ideas. And that's one of the key things I really wanted to understand from Manors because honestly, you guys have created some of the most watchable content on golf internet, to be honest. I mean, I'm going to shout out a couple of my favorites, like the lock-in at the local club until James
Oh
broke
yeah.
par there. I thought that was just amazing. Like it was just a really, really great piece of content. And then also the most recent one, which I just watched yesterday, was like the 9 holes at sunrise video.
Oh yeah,
And
those are both James. Those
yeah,
are
I
all
would I
James.
would highly, highly recommend people go and watch those. Even if you're not into golf, I would recommend you watch the 9 holes at sunrise video. The reason is because I found myself sort of 15 minutes into that video or something, or like 9 minutes into that video. And I was like, oh, there's not a single line of dialogue in this video, but I've been watching it without like being distracted by my phone or anything else. And that just goes to show like a great creative concept with that high production value can really hit even in,
Yeah.
the TikTok generation that we live in today. But Alex, the question that I wanted to ask you on the back of that is, what does that internal process look like inside of Manors for creative development? You're all obviously very creative, all have backgrounds in storytelling. Can you kind of unpack that sort of, creative punch up sessions, if you were, and how those kind of then feed into everything?
Yeah, I mean, we took a long time to get there, but we got quite obsessed with what we call the pipeline and the process. And we're on Notion, which is an amazing software, where you can just like dump ideas down and have all this stuff tracked. And um, yeah, I mean, we were so far away from this at the beginning. Like, it was an absolute mess at the beginning. It was basically us just sat around going, "What do you think we should do?" Um, and we'd kind of pick something and be excited about it. And Luke is like an ideas factory as well, so he was always jumping on something that he was excited to do, basically. Uh, but in recent years, in sort of the last year, really, we have two meetings. We have a Monday meeting and a Thursday meeting. And now on the Monday meeting, we have wins of the week, losses of the week. Why did it work? Why didn't it work? So the feedback is unbelievable. And that has been a tremendous difference. Is like once we've introduced positive and negative feedback about why things work, we're absolutely forensic about why did this hook work? Why didn't it work? What could we do better next time? We haven't got to the stage where we've started re-editing old videos to see if they'll work again, just because we produce so much content that we don't even need to. But in the future, I think we'll get into that stage where it's like, okay, why didn't this work? How do we make it better? We have all the stats, so we're pretty good with numbers now. We know how many impressions we need to get on our organic socials in order to get enough people on our website, in order to get enough people to purchase to hit our revenue target. And so we have targets weekly, and we know if we've made or missed them. And we have this on YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. We're not very good at, but there's goals to get better at it. So like the Monday meeting is not really a creative meeting. It's like a forensics meeting, and it's like, what are we doing next? And then the Thursday meeting is this is a new thing, but it's working very, very well. It's just a punch up. So it's it's a battle of ideas, and we've got a folder which is all the different references of stuff that we like from all across the internet, from whatever, boxing, running, from beauty brands, anything we like. And say, how would we apply this to golf? Why has this worked? It's all the most viral stuff on the internet. Why has it worked? Why has the format worked? How could we create this for Manors? That's more like that's our always on, like, social content, which is super important. For the campaign stuff, by the way, we have a campaign review, which is also similar. It's like, how did the rollout work? Why did it work? What didn't work? What piece, like, we're quite intense now. If you think we spend about 3 hours a week deciding why things did and didn't work and why the next thing will, over the course of 3 years, you get pretty good at knowing what works and what doesn't. With campaign stuff, that's a little, we'll have someone assigned to the campaign. So we'll have James is running so-and-so campaign. Aiden is running the Ryder Cup campaign. Luke and I will handle the bigger campaigns. And honestly, I'll just use an example for the foul weather collection. It was, we knew we had this opportunity to go to Iceland. We knew that Iceland was a really cool place for golf, and it had this unique thing, which is you can only play in the summer. And we just went away and thought about it, and both of us came in and had a sort of two-man punch up. We're like, everyone speaks about the fair weather golfer. Like, we all know who that is. We all know the fair weather golfer, and everyone's heard that term who plays golf, but no one's ever really thought about their counterpart or their antithesis. And there's this really dramatic thing of like, the summer is going, that you are going to lose the summer in Iceland, and they love golf so much, but it's like, it's gone. You're not going to be able to play for the whole winter. And so we wanted to hero, and honestly, at the beginning, the idea was like, it was nowhere close to the foul weather collection. Partly, and this is stupid, but it's true, we were excited about the fact that there'd been loads of Game of Thrones filmed in Iceland. So there was this whole like rich world of like Norse mythology, and you can see that in the typography of the collection and stuff. So I would say for these ones, it's like we go away and we look at all the different inputs and how they cross over, and like how does it apply to golfers. And I would say with the campaigns, it's a little bit less scientific and process driven, and it's a little bit more, what's a fucking cool story that hasn't been told in golf? Like, why is this going to be relevant to golfers? We often start with location, although we're trying to get away from that. It's more like, I'd say something that's interesting is the fact that every other golf brand is basically trying to say, this is going to make you better. And we don't have to say that. Like, we're never trying to say that. So all we're trying to do is, how do we entertain golfers? Like, what is a story that isn't being told right now? And it's just it's a way broader, way more exciting place to play in than these clothes are going to make you shoot scratch or whatever. So there's two parts. There's the like forensic analysis of how to make things go viral, but the idea part, it's hard to like. I have to admit, it's a little less process driven. It's a little bit more, let's get in a room, let's brainstorm, let's punch up.
You did mention one of the really interesting things that you mentioned in the prep call was like this idea of coming up with sort of 10 hooks when you're coming up with a creative idea. Can you talk to us a
Mm.
little bit about that?
Yeah, so once we have like a kernel of an idea, we got this from Max Fosh, who's a YouTuber who we know in Britain. And he's like, he won't make a YouTube video unless he knows the thumbnail and the title. It's like he's starting from what's going to go viral and grab attention. And we're not quite as cold as that, but it's an interesting thought experiment. It's like if you have a campaign idea, which is the foul weather collection, what are the six viral pieces of content? What are the things that are like they're a representation of that idea, but they're surreal, they're captivating, they are so over the top that people are not going to be able to look away, and they're 15, 20 seconds long. I'll give you a good example. So actually, if you park the foul weather collection for a second and think about our Reebok Manors campaign, um, we came up with this idea, which was based, Luke came up with this idea, which was based on the fact that we're both British brands. And in Britain, you walk the golf course. It's intrinsic to manners because it's about a game to be explored. Like we believe in, we don't do golf carts in manners as much. Like we think it's an outdoor sport, it's exercise. And so and it's British to walk the course. So that's important to us. It's a shoe collection. So made sense with the whole walking theme. And so no thanks, I'll walk became the caption, the tagline, the campaign message. And it was also a nice idea because it has that kind of polite Britishness, which is also a bit of a backhanded insult, which is very British. And um, the thinking of the viral idea for that is like, what's the most dramatic way to represent the fact that I'm just going to walk the golf course today? And we settled on let's blow up a golf cart. And at one point, before we were thinking about budgets, but when we were just in the like, screw it, let's make this as viral as possible, we had the idea to have a crane with the Manners logo on a wrecking ball and just have the wrecking ball go past the golf cart like 3 times. So everyone on social media, it's like, oh, you're just waiting for the golf cart to get obliterated. And as we think in our probably our Tuesday, our Monday and Thursday sessions of figuring out what works, what doesn't work, what goes viral, what works on the internet has informed the way we bring our campaigns to life because we have ideas, the foul weather collection, no thanks, I'll walk with Reebok. But then we go, okay, what do we know about social media that where we know what's the dramatic version of this idea that takes it to the nth degree that is just going to go viral on social media? Oh, let's blow up a golf cart. Oh, let's put a wrecking ball through a golf cart. For the foul weather collection, it was let's climb a mountain with 4 golfers. It was let's have a guy chipping to a green, but instead of chipping a bucket of balls, he's chipped 30,000 golf balls. And we actually went and got 30,000 golf balls. So it's like, you see what I mean? It's like we learn about the virality of social. We come up with campaign ideas the same way that we always would have for agencies or anything in our past. But now we use what we know about social media to go, how do we make this go viral?
I love that prompt of like, what's the most dramatic version of this? I think that's something that so us here at Rival and specifically the Rival media team, which I run, is like one of our mandates is like come up with something ridiculous to do every single month. And
Yeah,
Eric has
that's
been like great with that because he's always pushed like, what's the Rival did a thing that we're doing this month? And it's really bloody hard to come up with like cool ideas, but actually I really love that prompt of like what's the most dramatic thing. And I'm thinking about it in the context of 2 things. One, we're about to launch like the Rival 50, which is like our first time launching this annual list of like the best challenger brands in the world, the top 50 challenger brands in the world. We're going to launch our web summit on November the 11th actually, so a little shout out to that. But we're thinking about like, what is the campaign around that? Like, what's the most dramatic thing we can do to launch that? So that's definitely going to be something I take away to our team next week and speak to them about. But the other piece of that puzzle is like, as we've been building that list, we've been building like a scoring system for all these brands, like to understand what makes a brand like in the top 50 or number one when we score them. And actually, one of the key pillars that we're scoring them against is this idea of talkability, and actually being able to come up with content and ideas and things that are talkable, that get people, passing it around, sharing it, and talking about it continuously. So it really outlives just that moment when you post it. And that's a really interesting thing that you guys have done well.
It is the most misunderstood role within the C-suite.
Absolutely everything about the industry changed.
CMOs are really f***ed.
Out of all the Fortune 1000 businesses, there's only 41 of them that have a CMO on their board.
I think you're going to see more functions that were traditionally in the selling realm moving toward marketing.
In today's world, and especially as we look to the future, the role of the CMO is at a crossroads.
They'll be taken in by cheap parlor tricks.
We need to reinvent and reimagine marketing totally.
Deliver on your demand gen goal or lose your job.
If you can do that and make your CEO look good at the same time, actually that's a really powerful thing for a CMO.
It's not enough to just push that on the juniors in your department.
What does the future of the CMO role actually look like?
You know what's so interesting is we follow the founder of Instagram. Everyone should, by the way, like any brand should follow him. He's just constantly telling you how to win Instagram. And he's absolutely, obviously right. And he said the thing that they value the most in the algorithm is people hitting the share button to send to friends and direct message stuff to their friends. So if you can bring an idea to life that people want to take ownership of, that they say, I saw this first, I think it's cool, and I'm going to show everyone else, I'm going to sort of claim it as my own because I think it's cool and it's going to be a cool representation of things that I like. And they're going to send it to 10 friends because they liked it. It's like you're digitalizing that talkability feature. You're digitalizing the like word of mouth marketing, and it just self-propagates. And then like the virality of social now on Instagram, it's like, if you can crack that, you don't need to give your money to Facebook and Google.
That's so true. All right. So Alex, in the last segment of our brief and our conversation, I did want to kind of touch back on something you mentioned a little bit earlier, which was the Reebok collaboration. Like that was clearly a standout moment. Such an epic brand. Reebok is a client of ours on the agency side of the business, so we know
cool.
the good people that are there, and we know what they're trying to do to reinvent that brand as well. So I thought it was just such a cool partnership for Manors to do. Now, one of the key things that stood out for me in our prep call was something when I asked you, like, why did you guys choose Reebok? Your first response was, and I'll quote, "We fucking hate brand soup." And I really like that. So talk to me about that and like, how have you built this very strong internal filter or framework for evaluating, where you should partner and which brands you should partner with?
I actually heard that phrase from someone at one of the major brands in the world. I won't say who it is because we're going to have a partnership next year with them. It hasn't been released yet. But they said to us, we really like you guys because it doesn't feel like you do brand soup. And we were like, hell yeah. Like, we don't do brand soup. We don't want to do brand soup. And she hadn't really explained what it was, but we knew exactly what it was. There's a really fine line, right? Like, we're a business. We want to, we are trying to hit targets and make revenue. And, that's a huge part of what we do. It's not just creative, but equally, it feels like more and more of, particularly in fashion, but in every industry, there's just like a land grab where it's like there's so much done, and so much of it feels haphazard and not thought out. And particularly in fashion, when you talk about collaborations, the original collaborations were so novel and interesting, unique, and they were really authentic. And two brands came together and they found, like, what's the crossover? Where's the tension? What's going to be an interesting story to tell based on the crossover of these two brands? But people have obviously figured out that, like, oh, creating a novel moment is easy. You just put two brand logos together and you share audiences. And in a sense, that's true. Like, you do share audiences. There's something in the functionality of just like our audience plus your audience equals lots of sales, and lots of people are doing that. We really want to avoid that. And we said no to so many collaborations prior to Reebok because it just didn't feel right. And there wasn't a good reason to do it. And when Reebok came to us, there's a guy called Mubi, shout out Mubi, he's awesome. And he basically said, like, we love what you're doing and we're a British brand. We're getting back into golf in a big way. He showed us the original pumps, which is an old Reebok shoe. He showed us like the heritage with John Daly. He'd obviously really thought about like the Reebok archive, the streetwear heritage and the Britishness of it all. And he really got what Manors were doing. And it just felt like he was taking it seriously as a creative project, not as like, Manors are cool, let's do something together because we want to cash in on that. And so it just set a really nice foundation for let's go away and figure out how these brands actually interact and cross over and what's the cool tension and where's it going to work. And it's borne out in the product. Like, that campaign was so exciting and such a pivotal moment for us. And as we mentioned, we got to blow up a golf cart, and that has the opportunity. A lot of people drive golf carts. That had the chance to piss off a lot of golfers. And, majority of golfers in the US, which I imagine is Reebok's biggest market. And they were like, yeah, cool, do it. And yeah, I think the fact that they didn't want to be brand soup, that they didn't want to just slap two logos together, they were willing to take a few risks. It just made all the difference to making that campaign really strong.
Awesome. And I take it that's kind of the guiding, like, when you do look at collaborations, like, how far can we go? Are they going to let us be creative, and do they align from a value standpoint?
Totally. And so much of it is just how excited are they to do something interesting. And it's quite a nice position to be in now because we've done a really good one. We can take these calls and say, I'm quite proud of us that we didn't jump on things before this when we did need the money. We were quite disciplined and like, we're not going to do this because it's not us. And now we've got a lot of options and we get to choose. These guys are really excited about doing something really, really cool, and they're going to let us cook, and they're going to be excited to do it with us, and they're going to support us in all the ways that a big brand can. It just makes a huge, huge difference.
Awesome. Great. Well, Alex, if you have time, I'd love to do a quick lightning round, if that's okay with you, to end the conversation.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Awesome. Great. So switching gears a little bit now. If your brand were a pizza, what type of pizza would it be?
Fucking hell. I don't eat pizza.
What? That's blasphemous.
I would say, just because it's the best pizza, I would say wide, thin crust. I think you're probably dipping some garlic sauce. I'm just channeling my slightly overweight co-founder Luke, but for no brand reasons.
Fair. Okay. What's the best campaign you've seen recently?
I absolutely love the new KFC campaign where they it's the tagline is believe in chicken, and it's a whole
Oh, yeah.
ceremony where they are taking, it's like clearly like some sort of cult in the jungle, and they take a guy from the tribe and they dip him into the river, and he comes out as a chicken nugget, and there's a giant gold egg, and it's just like, it's nonsense, but it is so captivating and hilarious. And it's like the whole message is like, you should be spiritually in love with KFC because it is so good. And I just thought it was hilarious.
That is actually a great campaign. We'll definitely link it in the show notes here. What's the most underrated channel for challenger brands today?
LinkedIn.
Okay.
Everyone knows about TikTok. Everyone knows about Instagram. LinkedIn is hard to track. It's really manual, so you can't do like, you have to rely on your employees because it's employee led. But if you have a creative team, you can repurpose every single piece of content that you've done and tell people why you've done it, and it's just as organically impactful and potential to go viral as maybe not as TikTok, but yeah, it can go viral. And then the other thing I would say is so interesting. It's like we've done partnerships with PGA Tour, BMW, the RNA. We've got some big ones coming next year, which are super exciting. We've done some massive golf partnerships, and they've all come from LinkedIn. So you don't sleep on it. It's so good. And if you have a great brand, it'll do great on LinkedIn, and opportunities will come from there. Big opportunities.
Great. And final one, if your brand had a storefront, what would you put in the window?
I would like to have a storefront. I don't know what we'd put in the window, but we've actually done a concept for the store, and we have this idea of like half of it would be a coffee shop like you would have in, I mean, I know that's not particularly exciting these days to have a coffee shop in a retail space, but I think the exciting thing about it is you would have half of it as a clubhouse, and you would go through a door, and then you would feel like you're on a golf course. So you'd try and have like installations where there's, plants, and it would feel very outdoorsy, kind of, yeah, Arc'teryx vibe. But then golf has that interesting duality where it's like you have the cozy, warm, premium richness of a clubhouse, and then you go through to the like links golf course.
That would be very cool. When you open that, let me know. I'll be the first customer in the door.
We're desperate to do it.
Awesome. Well, that's all I have today. Alex, thank you so much. That was an incredible conversation. I've learned a lot for myself, but I'm sure the audience have picked up a lot as well there. I will make sure that we link everything we've spoken about in the show notes here. But thank you again for your time.
Thanks, mate. It was it's good to chat with you, Viren. And it's as I said, it's we still feel like a very small challenger brand, and so when anyone takes notice, especially someone like you guys, it's really encouraging for us, and we really appreciate it. And we're just the fact that some big voices are saying back to us what we think we're trying to do. It's very validating. So thank you.
Keep doing it, and look forward to seeing the growth of Manors. Take care.
Cheers, Viren.
Scratch is a production of Rival. We are a growth consultancy that builds challenger brands, strategies, and capabilities to disrupt categories. If you want to learn more about us, check out wearerival.com. If you want to connect with me, email me at eric@wearerival.com or find me on LinkedIn. If you enjoyed today's show, please subscribe, share with anyone you think might enjoy it, and leave us a review. Thanks for listening, and see you next week.